I'm going to give you two real life examples that I went through as to why you need to keep up with the crypto projects you own, the news, what they're doing, etc. And I'll tell you why. This will be the most important crypto video you'll ever watch. Okay, that's not true. But that leads me to my disclaimer, which is, I'm a big dumb animal, don't do what I do, informational purposes only. At the very end, I'll tell you a little bit about my school community if you haven't heard about it, but please like and subscribe and let's get started. The two I want to talk about, the first one, you're going to know, it's Mantra. But here's what's interesting. This was a previous video I had done, excuse me, about 2 months ago, it looks like. And someone just recently watched it and left a comment, wow, dodged a bullet with Mantra. And I forgot that I had discussed the fact that I sold Mantra in this video 2 months ago. And this was prior to, if you're aware, Mantra dropping quite a bit. So listen to this clip of the video, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Mantra and why. And pay close attention to the stock graph on here, because I'll show you what happened after this video.
And in February, I sold my Mantra, OM. Now, I love real-world asset stuff. However, I've been reading and following the news, so I sold it around the $7.50 range, and the Mantra gave me a 5x return. I was very happy with that, and I moved it into Arrow and Hedera, two that I think will do a 5x from the current price that I got. Mantra has a very high market cap, and its TVL is pretty low. Now, there may be things in the background I don't know about, but when I compare it to others like Ondo, I think Mantra, I don't think at $7.50 it's going to do another 5x from here. Ondo, I think would do a 5x from here. Why did I not just move it into Ondo? I already had a decent exposure to Ondo, so I looked at other things I wanted, and I said, okay, Arrow and HBAR, I'm going to put it in there. So there you have it.
All right, so I know what you're thinking. Good-looking host. I agree. Check out the chart, if you can see it there at the time of the video, and then let's look at it here. After the video, it went eventually down here. Okay, so why am I showing you that? Well, because I talk about this all the time, and that is staying up to date. Of course, everyone says do your own research. Research to me is initial research before you buy into a project. But then you need to keep up to date, in my opinion, or at least watch videos of mine and others on projects you like. I suggest you do it yourself. You can just jump into CoinMarketCap. You can go to their website. You can go to X and see what they're doing. So what I talk about quite often is I like to not only keep up to date with what the crypto's doing, but more importantly, what does that matter? If you see that they're doing things, is that good? Is that not good? You need a reference point. The best reference point I can come up with is other crypto in the same industry. Notice what I talked about there was I was going back and looking through my crypto, which I do periodically to see the news and what they're doing. And I saw Ondo and what it was accomplishing in the real world asset space. I saw Mantra in what it was accomplishing in the real world asset space and some other RWA projects. And after looking at them all, I thought to myself, well, this is interesting. Look at what these are doing. This one doesn't seem to be moving the needle. It's like if you're watching a 100-yard dash, they fire the gun and everybody's up, they take off and they're at the 50-yard line. Well, I guess now it's meters. They're at the 50-meter line. And one of them is back at the 10-meter line. And you're like, well, that's interesting. That one at the 10-meter line is not like the ones at the 50. So the reference point is look at other crypto in the same category. DeFi, RWA, AI agents, gaming, whatever it may be. Find the closest ones you can and then gauge them one to another, because that's what every investor is doing, right? It's opportunity cost. If I believe RWA is going to do really well, do I just want to close my eyes and pick an RWA project? No. I want to try to pick the best RWA project. Here's another stupid analogy. It's a horse race. You know all the horses are going to finish the race. That's not what you want. You want the one that's going to get in first place, second place, or just show. Okay. So that was the moral of this story with regard to Mantra. And the reason I posted this particular video was, and I believe this wholeheartedly, particularly in this bull run, picking something that does a 25x is going to be more difficult than picking something that does a 5x. So I took that money, like I said, and what I said, I moved it into Arrow and Hedera. I think Hedera is up from when I bought it, Arrow's probably down from when I bought it, but I still think they'll both do a 5x from here pretty easily, which means the money I moved out of Mantra will end up making me 25x. If I put 1,000 into Mantra and I took out 5,000 and I put that into Arrow and Arrow goes up 5x, well, that's my 5,000 times 5, 25,000. So first thing, Mantra, and then we'll talk about another one. So this just illustrates why I believe it's very important you stay up to date with what they're doing, because ultimately it did this. Maybe not necessarily because of what it's been doing or not doing. I think there were some other reasons with the tokenomics and whatnot that made it drop. But I still think it's valid when I said, look, I looked at their RWA. They don't have as much on chain compared to the market cap, whereas the other ones have more of a realistic ratio of what they've actually tokenized versus their market cap. So that was my reasoning then. It may have been the wrong reasoning. Doesn't matter. It still ended up plummeting. The other one, and I don't have anything against Mantra. They could be doing great things and they might continue to do great things. I'm just pointing out the second one was, and this was a little more interesting. So Mantra was sort of a gut check. This was more of a gut check, meaning go with your gut. This was IP. It's called Story. Essentially IP meaning like intellectual property and tokenizing intellectual property rights. And initially they took off and I bought in and I looked, it was around $1.17. My sale price ended up being an average of almost $6 by the time I sold it. And I talked about buying it in a video, and then in my school community, which I'll talk about at the end, I actually have a post telling everyone, hey, I sold IP. Why? Well, so if you don't know my background, computer scientist, wrote a bunch of code in that thing for a company or two that I started. Also was a patent attorney, so I know intellectual property rights. I dealt with it all the time. And things like copyrights are essentially what they call a bundle of rights, right to distribute versus right to actually perform, whatever it may be. And so when they're talking about tokenizing IP rights, I jumped right in and I was like, ooh, this is a new token. That's cool. Makes a lot of sense. Who wants to look at a 200-page licensing agreement about what someone can or can't do versus just tokenizing the right to perform, buying the token, and now you have that right? And the idea behind it I thought was brilliant. So I talked about looking at their website to see what they're doing, looking at their X posts or social posts to see what they're doing. Also, I'll give you an example of a project I really like called Bonzo. Started late 2024. I liked it because they're on the Hedera chain and they're the first and now the largest borrow and lending platform. They call it the liquidity layer on Hedera. So I bought into that one, not just because of that. That was step one. Step two, I watched what they were doing and what they were building, and they were executing very well. I liked what they were posting online because they're keeping up to date with what they're doing. Then they have a Friday call where you get to listen to the main individuals running that project. And after listening to them on those calls, I thought, wow, these are smart individuals. They're smarter than me, which isn't saying much. That's like saying, hey, they're smarter than that rock over there. Okay, so that's not saying much, but they are, I think, brilliant individuals. They're executing well. It checked all the boxes. I keep up to date. Where am I going with this? IP Story. It shot up. I ended up selling it right after I got on a call. And I'm not disparaging the project or the individuals. And I only listened to one call, but I've been involved with a lot of startup companies, some my own, that I've raised money for. 0 employees, 30 employees, 90 employees, building a company and building a project, software, online sites, whatever. It's not easy. And you have a lot of discussions like, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? Or wouldn't it be cool if we could do that? Which is very different than in 2 weeks, this has to go live. So we have to code it. It has to be right. We have to test it and QA it. Maybe we have to load test it, whatever. It has to go through all these different hoops before we actually move it and make it live in production. Okay. That's very different than, wouldn't it be neat if we could do this? And a bunch of, developers and people just kind of throwing things against the wall. I got on that call, and that particular call, at the time I was on, again, I'm saying they could be, I think they're executing very well. Their price is back up around $4. I don't want to put anyone down or anything, but when I was on that particular call, it felt to me like it was a lot of, it's going to be neat when we do this. It's going to be neat when we do that. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do that? And it was just like, it felt like a lot of just spitballing. And I thought, wait a second, this project is not where I thought it was. It's in the early beginning stages. it had rocketed up in price. Again, I got like a 5x on this one too, and I got out, and then it came down. Now it's around $4. So I would still have almost a 4x on this project. But this is an example of keeping up to date with everything. And wherever they have a touch point where they're putting out information, press releases are written by marketing people. I don't like those. It gives you basic news, but the rest of it is just baloney and fluff. The website, that's very biased. Their X posts, well, biased, of course, if they're putting them out, but information. And then when you search on their ticker or their name, you can find other people posting, and that's a good source of trying to get a better idea of what's really going on. But definitely, if they have calls, like weekly calls, get on, because this one, I bailed, I moved it in this, whatever I moved it into, and it has paid off. So that's all I wanted to point out today. I hope that was helpful. There's a link down below to a school community. I'll pop up these pages here so you can see I focus on 2 things. I have courses. They're all how-to courses. Whether it be getting crypto in an IRA or using a particular wallet, like a Coinbase wallet or an exchange, I go into how-to on everything, and then the community discussing all the different types of things. Like when I post, hey, I do daily posts, and if I buy or sell something, but more importantly, we go into all the research. So we'll have threads on all the different, whether it be Ondo or Mantra or IP Story or Hedera, posts, charts, videos, you name it. Have a great day. Hope this was helpful. Hope we can all make generational wealth together with crypto. Thanks for watching.